inside the trade for Quinnen Williams, Rich Cimini, ESPN looked into this, longtime AFC East reporter, and it's an interesting read. You know, the Jets made both those trades on the day of Nick Mangold's funeral, essentially. So you had Jets legends, Jets brass, ownership, all gathered here, and the GM Darren Moogie arrived late. He left early, and he was on the phone pretty much the whole time this went down. So he's at Mangold's funeral, but the deadline's coming up in 5 hours.
Oh, man.
As they're late morning in New York, and he's like, well, you know, I guess, the business of the NFL must go on. So he ends up leaving just a little bit early, like right at the end of the ceremony as people are kind of hanging out and still talking, and you know how that goes at a funeral for a couple of hours. He bails, and within minutes, apparently the facility was two minutes away, the Sauce Gardner news hit. And the people at the funeral were like, damn, man, we're mourning a teammate here, and the organization's trading away one of our best players. But there was really nothing that he could do, and he actually held the news as long as he could. Apparently, they could have announced that Sauce Gardner trade earlier, but he was just working, trying to keep it suppressed so people weren't talking about that as the ceremony was starting or going on. He didn't want to be a distraction. But the real premise of the trades for them is they're bound and determined to finally get their quarterback situation resolved. And they want to make damn sure they have the draft capital over the next couple of years to go get their guy, whoever they determine that it might be. I mean, I think I'd want to look at taking multiple quarterbacks here. You know, take one. If it's disappointing, take another one. Let them compete. Have at it. You know, I think it might bring out the best in them. But a lot of teams would think, let's identify our guy. I just think teams are kidding themselves if they really believe they can watch college tape and pick the good NFL quarterback. If there's 3 or 4 that could go in the top 10, I mean, chances are, historically, you're going to be disappointed.
Bro, it is such a crapshoot right now. And even when you draft a guy and it's Jaden Daniels, and year one you're thinking, okay, here we go, we're set. Yeah. And then 1 year later you see where things are at with him. And Drake May is now the guy of that class. We'll see what happens with Caleb Williams. Bo Nix looks like he's gotten even worse. We saw it firsthand last night. Michael Penix struggling mightily right now. So I mean, it's all over the place. Trying to identify a quarterback is extremely difficult. Even somebody like Sean Payton, who's been a quarterback freaking guru. The unbelievable stories that Broadus will tell us all the time about his years when he was on staff with the Cowboys and how he could just pinpoint, oh, this guy's got it, this guy doesn't. He's still the guy that ends up with Bo Nix.
Yeah, and congrats to him for making it 8-2. But could you imagine if he'd actually gotten a quarterback in there, how deadly that Denver team would be right now? It'd be something, and it was massively. I mean, the Broncos' skill players were talking last night like they'd lost the game. They're like, we've had enough. This is embarrassing. The defense is having to carry us to this. So yeah, I mean, point taken there. I guess C.J. Stroud a couple of years ago was the toast of the town, and now it's either the offensive coordinator isn't right, he can't stay healthy, but finding a guy and then having him actually be healthy is really tough. But there was a note in this story that kind of defines how much of a seller's market this was, and if you wanted to pry one of these players away from a team, you really had to overpay. The sources in Rich's story says Gardner's considered the most flawed of the elite corners, with one NFC executive saying, never been a huge fan of Sauce, so was a great deal to me that you just could not pass up. And, I don't know if you think the Cowboys maybe overpaid a little bit for Quinnen Williams. I think they did, but I think it's a good thing. I support it, because for a long time we've been frustrated that the Cowboys wait for the perfect deal to fall in their laps. And it's hard, to build out your roster if you're waiting for the perfect free agent or the perfect trade to happen, or just to outdraft everybody. And it's bared out that it's not been a successful team building thing. But with Quinnen, the story really focused on the fact that he'd played 100 games as a Jet, and he has the second lowest winning percentage all time in Jets history amongst players that have played 100 games.
Oh my gosh, I want to know who number one is.
It's their current long snapper, I think, that's been around a little bit longer. But he wanted out very, very badly. The story says how switching him to 3-tech defensive tackle was another factor that I don't think we discussed, or if we did, it was just mentioned. But he played nose tackle the majority of his career. This year, they slide him under Aaron Glenn to be more of a 3-tech. That further fueled his unhappiness. He really really wants to play nose, which is another reason to believe the Cowboys are going to that 5-man front. That's exciting to me because it was broken as a 4, and I think they'd only played 5-man front 18 times before Monday night.
Yeah, they've done it 43 times on the season, and they did it 27 times versus the Cardinals.
So 16 times. Do you get the feeling, and are you at least intrigued and maybe optimistic about what that could mean for this team's ability to kind of stop the run and also get to the passer a little bit more?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just Quinnen Williams in general. Like, even if you were going to do the 4-man line, he would still be a huge difference maker for you. But now that's kind of like a strength of your team, even though Osa and Kenny Clark haven't quite been probably what we were hoping they would be. But they should get better now alongside Quinnen Williams. That's still the strength that you have. So having those 3 guys on the field, I do think just Quinnen in general will help the pass rush. But from a run defense standpoint, and then you factor in the Logan Wilson stuff, I do think it should absolutely help.
And then they say, here, I'll give you some of this verbatim. Unlike the Gardner deal, the Williams trade came late and fast. Talks with the Cowboys intensified Monday. Jets team sources said the Jets made it clear to Dallas they had to be blown away to part with one of the league's best defensive players. Another team, reportedly the Jags, made a strong push. It was an ideal situation for the Jets. They had 2 teams interested, so they got a little bit of a bidding war. And I am frustrated at the same time, even though I support the overpay, and I do think it's an overpay. I am frustrated that the Cowboys, appear to say we want to make a trade today or we want to trade away a player and just they take what's there and just agree to it instead of, really hammering that thing out and, putting more time and effort into it. And, maybe after the Micah deal and the Amari Cooper deal a couple of years ago, they're hopefully they'll start to think more long-term, but I wouldn't count on it. He said, here was the clincher for the Jets. A team source said they negotiated the right to get the better of the Cowboys' 2 first-round picks in 2027 as Dallas had its own selection of the Packers pick from the Parsons trade. That could have huge ramification for the Jets if Dallas has a losing season in 2026 or 2027. So, that kind of just gives you a little bit more backstory on how that came together and why the Jets ultimately decided to do it. But you really had to convince them with, more capital than any other team would have given.
Yeah, I mean, I know John Lynch of the Niners. They didn't make a deadline move, and part of the reason why, when he was asked about it, he basically just said we weren't going to get fleeced. We weren't going to overpay. It's just not good business. Sometimes the best deals you do are the ones you don't do. And, every team situation's a little bit different. I get it for them. They've invested a ton into that roster. They've had so many injuries. They're probably not a player away from really winning right now. So I get why they went ahead and did that. And so I think that was just that's a picture of what the market was. Like the Dolphins should have moved on from all these guys, even the Jets, like hanging on to Breece Hall because they couldn't get a 3 and they didn't want to take a 4. And Miami with Minka and Bradley Chubb, and it's just like, man, you constantly see this throughout the league, really in all sports, of just guys or teams overvaluing their own guys.
Yeah, and I do think the 49ers might be playing a little bit scared after making the commitments that they did to a number of players and then ultimately not getting there. I think ownership got frustrated that the front office was saying, we got to do this, we're so close. And then last year to go as badly as it was, I think it kind of scared them out of that game of being aggressive. And, I would be nervous if I was a fan of that team thinking maybe we lost our stomach for the fight. It's like, you have to be willing to accept that you could put yourself in a situation 2 years out that's not ideal if you really want to go for it. And the chance to take your team on that kind of a run, like I feel like the Mavs lived off of that for a decade. The Rangers are going to live off that for a long, long time. Just what it does for your fan base, and it births like new generations of people who are passionate about your product and willing to spend money, to represent your team or to go to your games. Like all that's really important. And if you're afraid of that and thinking we can get there without sacrificing our future, I think the deck is so stacked against you. You better have a Mahomes or a Tom Brady in that situation.
Yeah, for sure. And they've had it tough because now their quarterback situation's a little bit weird. They paid for Purdy, and now he's not looking quite the same. He's been injured, and they just have so many injuries. But I'm in agreement with you. You can't. There's nothing better for your organization, big picture, than being able to take one home. And the Niners were on the doorstep so many times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, at what point do they just need to do kind of a tear down in order to rebuild it back up?
Yeah, a tear down to build it back up, or go all in. I think there should really be only two modes. And, I think front offices you're making $200 to $300 million a year. You know what I'm saying? Like, the money is coming in regardless of what you do. So I think that, kind of contributes to a status quo. Where are you with Dak? I just mentioned you better have a Mahomes, you better have a Brady. Tony Holzman, who does the at Front Office NFL Twitter account, it's a really good follow. Most completions of 25 yards or more this season. Patrick Mahomes does lead with 22 of those, but Dak Prescott coming in second with 21. It's been a hell of a season, but now, 2 weeks ago, 5 out of his 7 games have been great. Now it's just 5 out of the 9 games have been great. I wanted to believe that he had mastered an ability to play with extensive pressure, because that's what it looked like.
Yes.
But I don't know if defenses have made an adjustment to get home quicker, or they're knocking guys off routes a little bit quicker. Maybe Denver and Arizona both had blueprints that they were able to exploit more than other opponents. But, when you get back out there against the Raiders, I kind of need to see at least 35 to be optimistic and confident again.
Yeah, you want to see him get back to being dominant, and it's hard to be as masterful as he was to start the season. And then when you factor in all the penalties and the turnovers that they had in particular versus the Cardinals, it's going to make life extremely difficult on you. But and they're at a point where it's like he's got to be that perfect dude like he was versus the Packers, where it's, hey, you're getting pressure and you're still able to make plays.
Yeah, I got away from him so quick, but if they kick 2 field goals and don't have one of the 2 fumbles, Ferguson or Javonte Williams, they could have hit 30 easily, in that game.
Yeah, and the red zone stuff, like the red zone stuff is starting to become a problem here as well, and how much of that is on shoddy defenses maybe starting to get a beat on what it is you're trying to do here. This is just kind of the way it goes. There's going to be ups and downs throughout a season, but yeah, you'd like to see Dak get back to being that pinpoint dude. It's just hard to be that impressive week in, week out. For any of these quarterbacks.